Hey guys, Aaron here with another fountain pen review. And today I'm reviewing a vintage fountain pen. And this is a kind of an interesting fountain pen. You'll notice that here on the cap it says Mercedes. And this pen should not be confused with Mercedes-Benz. I know that there obviously are fountain pens out there produced by Mercedes-Benz, or at least with their marketing on them, but this is not one of them. However, this is a German fountain pen. Now, there's not a lot of history or information out there on this specific brand of fountain pen. And I'll tell you what I do know, and you can, if it's something that interests you, you can obviously do additional research. And there's a gentleman by the name of Thomas Kaweco, spelled Kaweco, on Fountain Pen Network, that there are several threads on there of people asking about this pen brand because they either acquired one or were thinking about acquiring one and literally could not find any information about the pen. And that, of course, is not uncommon, unfortunately, for some of the old German pen manufacturers. I mean, I reviewed a fountain pen, a Merlin 33 earlier, that while it was considered a Dutch fountain pen, and its parts were made in Germany, and there's really not a lot of information out there on that pen either. But I'll tell you what I do know. So this pen manufacturing company originated in Heidelberg, Germany, which at one point in time, Heidelberg was considered the fountain pen capital of the world. And if I'm not mistaken, they had roughly about 15 factories producing pens at one time. The pen company was believed to originate around 1924. And they were well known for making relatively inexpensive pens, but well-made pens as far as craftsmanship. They were known for having really smooth writing nibs. And I think, again, they were able to offer their pens at a more relatively economical price point, comparatively speaking to some of the other pen manufacturing companies at the time. They did offer their pens in a wide range of materials. I know I've seen some, or quite a few, offered in a hard rubber material. Obviously, the material that you see here. And I think I read somewhere that they had some celluloid materials as well. Now, I am not 100% certain on that. I could be wrong, but I swore I read that as well. Now, there was there was a rumor that the pen company was started by a former Mont Blanc employee, but that rumor is actually inaccurate and believed to be untrue, or is untrue. Now, one cool thing about the pens, I think, is the nib. A lot of them that you'll see there are semi-flex nibs, and they're oblique nibs. And in a lot of cases, you'll see some that will actually have an imprint on the barrel with like an OF or an OM, so oblique fine or oblique medium, or even an OB. Mine happens to just have an F, which you can see here at the back of the barrel, closer to the piston turning knob. Now, this happens to be an oblique nib. Now, I don't know if only certain manufacturing time frames they decided to put that stamp on the pens, and then some they did not, or they changed that at one point. Obviously, we don't know. But I did think that was something interesting to talk about, is that it is technically a semi-flex nib, and it's an oblique nib, which I think to me is really cool about the pen. At least to me it is. I'll show the nib here in a moment, but this nib happens to be a gold nib. Now, there's a lot of Mercedes pens out there that are offered in a steel nib variation. The one that I have here happens to be a gold nib. Now, one downside to these pens, and you'll see if you happen to read any of the threads on Fountain Pen Network, is that they were used, or they were manufactured with a cork seal, was used for the piston. And the problem with that is you're utilizing a natural material that is encased inside this barrel, and you'll never really for sure know the state of that material. It could be brittle, stiff, it could seize up inside of the barrel. And so as far as repairing that, there's really not a lot of information out there on how you would repair that. And in fact, in the thread, Mr. Kaveco talks about, I think, some of the failures to try and repair that cork seal. So that is something that I did want to note, that may, steer people away from this pen. And obviously when you're offering these pens at a lesser price point, you have to sometimes, I'm sure, utilize what is readily available to you. And that just happens to be that cork seal in there. Obviously this pen would be a step or two below, probably two below a Mont Blanc or a Pelican fountain pen. But still has some really cool characteristics to the pen. So real quick, talking about the actual pen itself, and starting at the bottom end, you have your piston turning knob here. No distinguishing markings other than the F on the barrel. Moving up to our cap here, we have a slight step up, and you'll notice we have our cap band here. And the plating on our cap band is really good, actually. It is in very good condition. There's no issues as far as tarnish or anything like that on the plating. You notice we have Mercedes here, and then you'll see our clip. I do like this clip. To me, I don't know, it definitely has a German look to it. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Pelican. The clip is springy. It works very well. Definitely fits. Because of the size of this pen, this is a good pen to go in a shirt pocket. It's a good pen to take on a business meeting, because it fits in a shirt pocket. While the cap is a screw-off cap, it takes, I would say, about 3/4 to almost a full turn. So it definitely can come off quickly. So I do like this clip, and I like the size of the pen. Moving on up the cap, you'll notice we have our finial up here with our jewel. And really that's it on the pen. We have 2 breather holes, one on either side of the clip. And that's it as far as the outside of the pen. Now taking off the cap reveals the nib and section. Now the barrel threads are not shallow, but they're not sharp either. So if you're somebody that holds your pen up high, to me it's not discomforting at all. I typically hold mine about right there, and for me it's not an issue. Now this pen can be posted. However, I don't typically post my vintage pens, but it is a relatively small pen. And I'll zoom out just a tad to kind of see it. So, if you're someone that has large hands, this would definitely be a pen that you may want to post. Now, looking at the section, it tapers down just slightly in the middle and then flares back out at the end. And then looking at the nib, we see Mercedes. It does have 14C, so 14 karat, 585. And then we have OSMI IRID. So, what is it? Osmioroid or osmium iridium. So, talking about the tipping material on this pen. Now, as I said before, this is an oblique nib. So definitely, I don't want to say it has a sweet spot, but it definitely is a little bit different than using just your regular nib. And it is a semi-flex nib. Definitely by no means a full flex. If I would say the kind of characterize the nib, to me it is a workhorse nib. While yes, it's a flex nib, it's not a nib that I'm going to push very hard because it is somewhat stiff, and I don't want to ruin this nib because I'll probably never find another one, or at least not another pen like this. But it is a great workhorse pen, and I enjoy using it very much. I normally use Pilot Konpeki in this pen quite a bit. I put Pilot Blue in this pen this time, and I might flush it out. I don't really like the performance of the ink. I was wanting to go with something different. A lot of my vintage pens, I usually use a Waterman ink, but I trust the Pilot inks as well. At least I've used a lot of them in vintage pens. And the Konpeki, for whatever reason, just worked great with this nib and feed. The Pilot Blue, I don't know if it's just drier for some reason. It doesn't seem to perform quite as well. And you guys will kind of see that in the writing sample. After this review, I may actually flush out the pen and switch back to the Konpeki. Up next, guys, I'll do a quick sizing comparison. Actually, I'll do it right now, and then we'll do the writing sample. So the pens that I have for the sizing comparison are more modern, trying to give something that would be well known or owned by a lot of different people. So you've got a Pilot Metropolitan here. You've got a Jinhao X750, and we've got our Mercedes here. So you'll definitely notice there is a big difference as far as size. As I said before, this is a great pen to put in a shirt pocket. I'm not going to show them uncapped. It's smaller all the way around. It's smaller uncapped. It's smaller when you cap the pen. It's not going to get any bigger at any point. It's not going to grow. So up next, guys, writing sample, and then we'll finish up there. See you in a moment. All right, guys, we are back, and we're going to get started. All right, as I said before, this is a Mercedes fountain pen. And the ink, as I stated before, is Pilot Blue. And you know, I guess it's doing okay. Maybe it was just me. Maybe I'm just being too critical. I don't know why I switched the ink. Usually on my vintage ones, I try and keep the same ink in each pen, and I usually write it down. I thought, oh, hey, Pilot Blue, I got it sitting there. I'll try it. Now, as far as a writing sample, there you have it. Now, as I said before, this is definitely a workhorse pen. Now, because of that tipping material, you'll hear a little bit of feedback, and you'll notice it. To me, it's kind of a pencil-y feedback. By no means is it uncomfortable. I would not call this pen a gusher by any means. Now, again, I don't really like this ink in this pen. It is a fine nib. It's not a gusher, but it's consistent. Now, you can get some line variation out of this pen. Now, I'm not going to push it, but you can see it. I can get a little bit more if I pushed it, but I'm not going to. This is a great pen because it doesn't weigh anything practically to write with. It's a great pen for long writing sessions. Great workhorse pen, as I stated before. It's a good pen to write thank you cards with. Write a long letter to a family or a friend. It is all around an awesome pen. I enjoy the oblique nib. It's definitely, to me, it kind of makes me more aware of how I'm holding my pen and how I'm writing, if that makes sense. And I'm sure for those of you that use oblique nibs, you'll know what I'm talking about. I know that a lot of people talk about it has more of a sweet spot. To me, I don't notice it as much, but then again, I'm usually trying to be pretty aware, cognitive of how I'm holding my pen. I don't know. This is a cool pen. I know it's a vintage pen. It's not like it's readily available. I got this pen for, I think, a little under $100, which I've seen it go, similar pens, very similar to this one, go for around 125 and upwards of 150. So I feel like I got a pretty solid deal. I think I got lucky, honestly, getting this pen, if I was to be honest. But sometimes that's how the roll of the dice goes with vintage pens. I have some pens that I don't want to say I regret buying, but I probably jumped the gun, and I probably overpaid on them too. This happens to be one where I think I got a decent deal. Guys, give me a thumbs up or a like, subscribe if you happen to own one of these. If you know more about it than I do, please comment. Share your opinions of the pen. Let me know what you think about it. Next time, I am going to be doing a modern fountain pen, something that people would be more probably prone to buying. But I definitely wanted to share this one because this pen means a lot to me. I enjoy it very much. And if you happen to see one of these, Antique Mall, eBay, and it's got a, I would say if it's under $100, it has a gold nib. Now, there's a lot of them that are still nibs, which I've read that they still have flex to them and they still work well. But if you find one of these, definitely consider buying it. Okay? Everyone, have a wonderful week. I'll see you guys later.